Hey guys, it's Mark from Periphery again, and in this entry of the column, I wanted to talk to you guys a bit about long-running sentence riffs. And what I mean by that is a riff that sort of gives the impression of having repetitions as being a repeating riff, which I can say probably 98% of all metal riffs have some sort of repetition or recycling involved. But the riffs I'm talking about, and we have a couple examples in our music, are riffs that sort of keep going like a run-on sentence. And today I'm going to break down the riff in the second verse of the song Graveless. So for this song, I utilize a tuning that I like to call drop A tuning, which for 99% of our six-string songs, we play a whole step down. So we call that drop C tuning. The sixth string is dropped down a whole step. With this, it's dropped down an additional step and a half. So you have the low note being A. And what that allows you to get away with is octaves fretted like a power chord traditionally in standard tuning. And really good for dissonant, bigger chords as well. So, very useful. So low to high, the tuning is A, G, C, F, A, D. One of the big hallmarks of our music is that the music's very angular and jagged, and it sort of keeps things interesting for us as musicians. We really like a lot of that in other players and our influences, but we find that it provides this very jarring effect in listening to it, and this is one of those examples. Not only does the phrase continue for a long period of time, it doesn't repeat, and there's a lot of over-the-bar playing and a lot of sections where it doesn't go quite where you think it's going to go rhythmically and harmonically. And in one of the previous columns, I mentioned that I like to write riffs based around chords. I'll think of a group of chords, and then I'll write a riff that sort of uses them as totem poles. And the riff begins like this. And after that, two chugs open. So it goes. And that's you sliding up to the 13th fret and hitting this 10th fret on the way down, and then going a step or a half step lower to hit this 12th fret. And then to this little section. After that is a cool technique that I like to use in a lot of my riffs, as you can probably hear, is sliding down lower in the octave, again, to sort of freshen up the dynamic that the riff is currently in. For instance, if you were to play in one position here, you would kind of sort of be able to predict the rest of the notes being played in the riff. With this section, it slides back down to where the riff started, so it goes. And then you're back to where it started. You can sort of continue off in a similar path. And then when you play these top three notes, there's a cool effect that happens here where you're bending up on the 8th fret to sort of match this first string. But only for a split second. It's a half step bend up, unison, but only for just a bit, not even a fraction of a second. So sounds pretty cool when played fast, actually, because it's barely there. You kind of think you're hearing a mistake, but it's not a mistake, I promise. And then one of the things I like about this drop A tuning, as I call it, is that the fact that you can do octave chords with the power chord shape. And after that, it sort of goes into the second half of the long sentence riff, as I call it. And that begins on the 3rd fret here, changing keys, but keeping the same type of ambiguous tonality to it. And that starts like this. that's another sort of just playful sort of tangle with very small intervals and dissonant intervals. So the second half of the run-on riff starts on the 3rd fret, which it signifies a key change, and it begins with this phrase. And it's a very playful series of notes because it dances around in small intervals, and it provides a very sort of jarring dissonance. I don't normally like to do those on lower strings so much, as I find they kind of get lost in the mix a little easier. I like to keep it to the high strings, but it just seemed cool. Actually not 3 of the guitar players, 2 of the guitar players of the band, me and Misha, play that part live. So when you have 2 of the guitarists sort of playing that riff, pan right and pan left, it provides this cool dissonant effect. So the riff goes. And this part's also making use of the small intervals between notes and open strings, 2 of the things that I like to do a ton. And that goes. So those are 4 consecutive notes, a half step apart from each other, but they're played in different contexts. So you have this note, a half step up. Instead of fretting the 9th, you get a more jarring sound. And while you let that top string ring out, you play the octave here. So played very slow. That's. It's really messed up sounding if you can play it cleanly. And the tail end of that riff goes back down to the lower section of the fretboard again and finishes it off like this. And again, making more use of close intervals and open strings. And that's a chord, again, that makes use of the drop tuning that I'm in and some open strings. So it's a fun chord. And here's the chorus section to Graveless. So the chorus is built off of the power chord of this tuning, which visually it's a power chord, but harmonically it's an octave. So that looks and sounds like this. And that's the basis, that's the root of the chord. The dressings and voicings on top of the chord are only made possible by the alternate tuning. It would be a lot harder to fret this chord if you had just a standard tuning in place. And that goes like this. So you have triads there, and you're hitting an open note between the top 2 voicings to provide some droniness, as I call it. And then after that, you go down and play this chord. The chord starts to get a little bit darker there to provide a little bit more, I guess, drama in the chord series. And our singer Spencer has a really cool vocal line that reflects the minor key change. And then the last chord is. And then the whole progression is finished off with this little lick.